compensation. David Davis joins me, Conservative MP for Halton, Price and Howden. Good afternoon to you.
Afternoon.
How do you speed this up, and what does that look like?
Well, the first thing on the exoneration side of things, overturning the convictions, is we should stop objecting or challenging the appeals. I mean, that's apparently the post office authorities have been challenging the appeals on the way through, so that's got to stop. But beyond that, all of these convictions depend on one statement, which is a lie, and that is that only the postmasters and postmistresses had access to their computers. We now know that's untrue. And we now know that the post office lied about it, and so that undermines every single one. Now, I don't see why it shouldn't be possible to have a mass appeal. You know, everybody whose computer was accessed by the post office or by Fujitsu, their conviction should automatically be overturned. So I'm going to be speaking again. I spoke to Alex Chalk last week on this matter. I'm going to be speaking to him again when he's talked to Kevin Hollinrake. So that's number one. Number two, similarly with the compensation, the post office has hired the most expensive lawyers in London to nitpick and challenge the compensation claims, which of course making them take forever. And that should stop, and there should be an accelerated process there. And I think I'm right in saying that the Minister, Kevin Hollinrake, has been working on that. Now, how far he's got, whether it's concluded, we may find out this afternoon, because we've got a statement from him later on this afternoon, probably about 5 o'clock. So that's the second thing. Those are the two most important things. Let's be clear about this. Those two stand head and shoulders in terms of need to do something above everything else. The third thing I want to see is a proper criminal investigation of who lied, because that's the issue here. Some people in that post office, and possibly in Fujitsu as well, lied to the court and lied in bringing the case.
And just so people know, what do you say the lie was?
Well, the lie, there are a number of lies. Lie number one was to the postmasters and mistresses themselves, which was, you're the only case we've had like this, you know, when we know they had thousands, right? Lie number two, the most important lie, was nobody but the postmaster or postmistress had access to their computers. Now, as the docudrama that was ITV's docudrama last week showed, actually, the head of the Post Office Union being shown round the place where they accessed the computers from. It was like something out of Fort Knox, behind all sorts of security doors and so on. So plainly that's untrue, and that undermines absolutely everything. And that's almost certainly the origin of the original problem. That Horizon was a flawed, faulty computer system which Fujitsu had to keep meddling with and altering to make it work. And in the process of doing that, I suspect they created all these massive financial errors, which then got blamed on the postmasters and postmistresses. So
do you think it was just a skin-saving exercise on the part of Fujitsu and the post office?
Well, I mean, they look. This is a state computer system. When was the last time one of those worked out of the box? Never has it? So they had to continue making it work. Just as on your computer at home, you have downloads to Windows or Macintosh or whatever.
Upgrades and the like.
To upgrade and correct, and always in them. If you look carefully, you'll see they're also sorting out one bug or other in the past. And basically, this was going on the grand scale in every postal computer across the country. And then out of that, you've got the problem of the post office's own police force, its own prosecutors, actually then taking this up and charging people. And one of the things we should do is take that away from the post office. There's no way you should allow an organisation, even a trusted big state organisation like the post office, to mark its own homework and to actually charge people with criminal offences. You know, that should be solely the preserve of the Crown Prosecution Service.
Well, let me put this to you. Professor Chris Hodges, you'll be familiar with what I think what he has suggested. He's an emeritus professor of justice systems at the University of Oxford and a chair of the advisory group overseeing compensation to the victims. He believes that, and he says it's the obvious thing to do, the right thing to do, which is for Parliament to pass a very simple act overturning all of the convictions. Now, I heard you earlier on today, David Davis, saying that at least one victim that you had spoken to wanted something more individual than that, or was minded to want something more individual than that, to make sure that just as justice was supposedly be seen to be done when she was convicted, it can be seen to be done when it's overturned.
That's exactly right. I was talking to her about the possibility of a pardon, a pardon,
a generalised pardon,
generalised pardon. And she said, well, that doesn't say that we're innocent. That basically says, we are exempt, or
you're forgiven.
From punishment. Forgiven, rather than, you see, so it's a different thing. And to some extent, the same argument applies to an Act of Parliament. I mean, look, I can see why, from his point of view as a chairman of the advisory committee, wanted to facilitate his own work. But I think we're doing two things here. We're enabling compensation, of course, but we're also hopefully reinstating the self-respect of all these people who have been psychologically destroyed, I think is probably the right word for this. And one of the reasons that the docudramas had such effect is that it's brought home to people the sheer personal human damage that's been done by this.
Which can often be missed in straight journalism, can't it?
Oh, yeah.
Factual stuff.
I've had case after case in terms of miscarriage of justice cases, if you like, where the public know what's happened broadly, but they don't really imagine, they haven't taken the time to imagine quite what pain it's caused or quite what misery it's caused. And that's what's been accelerated here, that the docudrama did that for people. And I've had calls from even furious MPs, let alone furious constituents about it. Quite rightly, very angry about it.
Quite right that our focus is today and beyond today on the Post Office when we talk about this. But you and I met recently with Kay Adams, the broadcaster. She and I and many others facing the heavy hand of the state on IR35, for example, that tax question. Yep. There are too many examples, not just on IR35, in other instances as well. Hillsborough, which I talk about from a position of great experience and knowledge, was another example of it, where bodies of state just always had the upper hand because they had endless funds, and you as an individual don't. I mean, Kay paid $100,000 to go to court in the end, to go to the Court of Appeal, which didn't even rule on her case. It was ruling on a tiny piece, a technicality of law that really the state should have dealt with.
That's right, and you had the same thing with the tainted blood scandal only a month ago. What's happened.
Daniel Morgan.
Yeah, him. You've got the Chinook crash. We've got a TV program on that coming out in a month's time. So all of these things are areas where these big organisations. It isn't always the state. Big corporations can be just as bad, but big organisations have a sort of set of reflexes which is designed to protect them, to protect their reputation. I mean, a lot of this, when we've been hearing about this from the management of the Post Office, has been protecting the reputation of the Post Office. Of course, it's done precisely the opposite. Protecting the reputation of the managers and the senior managers and their bonuses and so on, and ignoring or avoiding the blame for something. All these things happen, and you're right. It's a David and Goliath battle every time when it's one of these big corporations or big bureaucracies get involved. Which is, I mean, truth be told. I spend a significant portion of my time as an MP on exactly these cases because we can at least have a chance of straightening it out.
Well, can I ask you really quickly, because I have gone over time, is it then time for MPs to particularly those in government, to really get their heads together? And, the Hillsborough law suggested is one example of this, but whatever it's called, get your heads together and get a law in place so that when the state is up against an individual or vice versa, there's individuals up against the state, there is a level playing field judicially. Yeah,
it's the answer to your question. The short answer is yes. It's bloody difficult to do.
But that's because of unwillingness, isn't it?
Well, it's not just unwillingness. You're going to get unintended consequences inevitably out of these things. But that just means we have to think harder about it before we do it.
Okay.
But you're right. It should be done.
Thank you very much indeed, David. David Davis, Conservative MP for Holton Price and Howden, former chairman of the Conservative Party. Your call.